Tell us it was someone else's fault. But this president cannot tell us that you're better off today than when he took office.
Colorado is not better off under President Obama. Obama's excessive government regulations are crushing job creators. Thousands of jobs have been lost. Thousands more are threatened. Obamacare, his war on coal, natural gas and oil, and the failed stimulus have hurt Colorado. Colorado is a state of business builders, but under Obama, businesses are afraid to locate here. We need an environment where entrepreneurs can flourish. The Romney Plan for Colorado? Mitt Romney will repeal Obamacare, eliminate excessive regulations, foster innovation, and create over 200,000 new jobs for Colorado.
I'm Mitt Romney. I'm running for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Romney for President, Inc.
The Beth Messiah Congregation invites you to come and experience a Messianic Roots biblically based congregational fellowship as we observe God's Shabbat in Messiah Yeshua. Praise and worship services begin at 10:30 a.m., followed by an Oneg Shabbat meal mid-Rosh and fellowship. Beth Messiah Congregation is located at 8333 Acoma Way in North Denver. You can find out more information by calling 1-800-205-6245. Everyone's welcome, so join us this Shabbat. And Shabbat Shalom, good Sabbath.
Well, Barack Obama, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, and Benjamin Netanyahu have now all spoken at the United Nations. So tell me, does anyone out there feel any better about the fate of Israel and the West? My name is Howard Riell, and this is Real Truth. You're listening to the American Freedom Network, streaming live around the world at AmericanNewsNet.com, and on Facebook, and on YouTube, and in the book, Real Truth, Stay Angry. And, of course, as always, broadcasting out across the Colorado Front Range on KHNC, Johnstown, Colorado, 1360 AM, The Lion. Our call-in number, 877-254-7524. My friends, we will not be on the air Monday or Tuesday of next week in observance of the Festival of Sukkot. We'll be back on Wednesday. Let's hit it. Item from USA Stands with Israel. A message from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel as he prepared to leave Israel for New York City a few days ago. I quote, "Dear citizens of the State of Israel, I fly tonight to New York to represent the State of Israel upon the UN stage. We are on the issue of Iran are all united in the objective of preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. On the day in which we pray to be inscribed in the book of life, that was before Yom Kippur, Iran's despotic regime that strives at every opportunity to condemn us to death was provided a stage. On the eve of Yom Kippur, sacred to the Jewish people, the Iranian foe elected to call publicly before the entire world for our extinction. This is a black day for those who elected to remain in the hall and listen to these words of vituperation. In the words which I will deliver before representatives of the countries of the UN General Assembly, they will hear our response. As Prime Minister of the Jewish People's State, I am operating in every way to ensure Iran will not have nuclear weapons." Stop! In your tracks. Lie. It's a lie. Benjamin Netanyahu is not operating in every way to ensure Iran will not have nuclear weapons. If he was, Iran would be missing a city or two or three by now. Instead, Netanyahu is talking and talking and talking. But talking isn't the only thing he's doing, my friends. He's also crawling. He's also begging. He's also pleading with the nations of the world, and it is high comedy tragedy that he's doing it, that he's done it at the United Nations. The United Nations hates the State of Israel. The United Nations hates America. The United Nations would dearly love to see Israel demolished. So how pathetic is it to see a Prime Minister of Israel standing in front of the United Nations and pleading his case while they are laughing up their sleeves at him? You know, maybe the greatest of all biblical commentators was a commentator named Rashi. He lived in France around 1200-something. He was an absolute incredible genius and a living saint. And to this day, his writings are studied. He wrote about Chilul Hashem, which is desecrating God's name. And Rashi wrote that the weakness of the Jewish people, every time they're gassed, every time they're shot, every time they're rounded up, every time they're exiled, every time they're legislated against, the weakness of the Jewish people is in and of itself, by definition, a Chilul Hashem, a desecration of God's name. So what is God thinking when he sees Israel, a nuclear power, the strongest army in the Middle East, resurrected miraculously after almost 2,000 years, according to prophecy, liberating the Temple Mount in a war in which it was ganged up on by multiple Arab nations, winning the war in 6 days. Miracle upon miracle. So what does God think when he sees the Prime Minister of Israel on his belly, crawling to a piece of crap like Barack Obama, and a session of scorners? That's the way King David wrote it in Psalms. A session of scorners. A body of ambassadors that hates freedom, hates the West, hates America, and most of all hates Israel and Jews. And here is the Jewish Prime Minister representing the Jewish state on his belly, crawling before them, and saying the threat is undeniable. We know that Iran is quickly, very quickly approaching the ability to launch nuclear weapons at us. And instead of doing something, instead of taking action to defend 6 million lives, I'm here before you saying, please give me permission. Yeah, maybe there's a God. Netanyahu is not a religious man. God or not God, you guys make the decisions in the world. So tell me what I can do. Please let me defend myself against nuclear holocaust. My friends, as a Jew, it turns my stomach. As a person of faith, whether you're Jewish or not, I'm guessing it turns your stomach to see the mighty humbled, to see the righteous on their knees before the wicked. It's just that basic. No, I was going to read you some of the comments that Netanyahu made, but I can't stand it. He was drawing a nice, pretty chart on the UN and drawing a red line showing how close Iran is to having nuclear weapons. And every bit of it, every word of it, every syllable of it is disgraceful. It says in the Talmud, and I've quoted this line 100 times on this show, if one comes to slay you, slay him first. When the president of Iran gets up on television multiple times and says, we need to eradicate Israel. We're working on the nuclear program. We need to destroy Israel. Israel is the source of all its evil in the universe. You don't go hand in hand crawling to the UN. I forgot Netanyahu doesn't cover his head. You don't go crawling to people to help. If God has seen fit to give Israel nuclear weapons, and everything that happens comes from God, if Israel has nukes, it's because God intends them to have them. So when some punk in Iran comes and says, the Holocaust never happened, but I'm going to create a new Holocaust, you don't go hat in hand to the United Nations, which spits on you anyway. You take action. If one comes to slay you, you slay him first. That is righteousness. That is compassion. That is justice. And that's what a leader does. We are an orphaned generation, my friends, a generation without leadership. We are a rudderless ship. And the only people who know what they're doing on board our ship are the pirates. And we're at their mercy. This is Real Truth. It's Thursday. We'll be right back.
And let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching. This is Pastor Michael Golden. My wife Danny and I would like to invite you to join us at the Voice of Many Waters congregation for a Mikra HaKodesh, a holy convocation. Every Saturday, Shabbat, at 1 p.m. at 3J's Christian Coffee House, 21 North Parish Avenue in Johnstown. We'll be having praise and worship, fellowship, midrash teaching and study time, followed by an oneg. Check out our website at www.voiceofmanywaters.org. That's voiceofmanywaters.org. Or call us at 1-303-522-3562. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful.
11 years ago, when my uncle started the Patriot Trading Group, gas was 75 cents a gallon. We were running an alleged budget surplus, and the total national debt was $5 trillion, and the government was forecasting the debt would be eliminated by 2010. And I thought my uncle was a wacko with tinfoil on his head, while I owned tech stocks certain to become a millionaire before the millennium rolled over. Since then, the debt has doubled, jobs are heading overseas, and 100,000 people have joined Eric with tinfoil on their heads. I'm Joe Jaquin, Vice President for the Patriot Trading Group, and as gold and silver have doubled and even tripled during the first 11 years, the issues facing this country over the next 11 years look far worse. Call the Patriot Trading Group at 800-951-0592. We offer all forms of gold, silver, platinum, and palladium, shipped and delivered at the most competitive prices in the country. Call us, 800-951-0592, or check out our website at allamericangold.com. And remember, you don't need to have tinfoil to own gold and silver.
My friends, there are people who will do anything to avoid using a four-letter word, God. They don't want to acknowledge that God exists. They'll believe in all kinds of other nonsense, but not God. You cannot look at the state of Israel and understand what the hell it's about, why it's there, and why it will never be destroyed unless you factor God into the equation. Here's a video that you'll find linked on my Facebook page, Real Truth Radio. That's R-I-E-L-L. The headline, the most important video about Israel you'll ever see. What is there about Israel? It's that touch of the miraculous, of the divine, that resurrected it and that keeps it going. Let's listen to some of this video. And, of course, you're invited to go to my Facebook page, click on the link, and watch the whole thing. Let's listen.
Why are the Jewish people in Israel today? Is it random? Is it a coincidence? Or is it destiny? What's happening in Israel today is the culmination of Jewish history. For almost 4,000 years, the Jewish people have been living on faith. Faith in prophecies given thousands of years ago. Promises that seem irrational, promises that seem almost impossible. Every prophecy dependent on the next. If one isn't true, none of them are true. Every single one of them is coming to pass in our lifetime. Every single one of them. The first promise to Israel was made to Abraham, an eternal covenant. And I shall establish a covenant between me and you, and between your offspring after you throughout their generations, as an everlasting covenant. The Jewish people are the only ancient people alive today. The Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Jebusites, the Canaanites, all of them are gone.
Well, no nation has survived such scattering and then remained a nation. They became assimilated. Eventually, any trace of the original is gone.
We, an eternal people, stand alive today. We also know that if the Jewish people don't live a godly life in the land of Israel, we're promised to be scattered to four corners of the earth.
Which is, guaranteed to cause an extinction of any people. Scatter people around the world, they're going to be gone.
The last thing you would want to do to an eternal people is to scatter them across the world with no common culture, no common language, no internet, no forms of communication. How will the Jewish people stay Jewish? How will we stay eternal if we're scattered across the world? And yet, that's exactly what happened.
We remain the people, not only just a faith or religion, but a family.
God will scatter you among the people, and you will be left few in number. The most recent census numbers the Chinese people at 1.3 billion, plus or minus 12 million. 12 million That's the entire number of all of the Jewish people worldwide. We're a statistical error when just counting the people in China. That's how small we are.
The fact that we're scattered and small and we've been subject to the greatest hatred in human history.
The Torah tells us the atrocities and the curses that would come upon the Jewish people throughout the exile. And you I will scatter among the nations. I will unsheathe the sword after you.
No one has suffered as we have suffered. No one has been as persecuted.
Anti-Semitism, the oldest, most universal, intense, irrational hatred in the world.
If it was pogroms, crusades, the Inquisition, Muslim oppression, nation after nation, religion after religion.
نحن نعادي اليهود حتى ولو أعادوا إلينا فلسطين. وإن لنا عندهم نحن المسلمين لثأرا لا وقت.
And the persecution we faced has always transcended all logic and rational thought. When we were poor and destitute in the shtetl, we were hated for being parasites. When wealthy, for being money-grubbing. One thing that we could always rely on is that there would always be a reason, a pretext to hate us.
And despite all the persecution, not only have we survived, but we've thrived.
Now imagine this, a tiny, persecuted, scattered people. Out of all nations, how are they supposed to shift global consciousness?
The same nation that everyone's going to hate is going to be scattered around the world and shouldn't even be here is told we're going to be a light to nations. You know, those two things don't go together. You know, we shouldn't even be here, much less impact the world.
Here is a people that, small in number, that has influenced the world in unbelievable fashion.
All the science and all the wonderful things that they contribute to the rest of the world. Wherever they find themselves in any country, they become the lifeblood of that country. They're an extraordinary energy.
And you can literally see a direct correlation between countries that have Jews in them and how they treat the Jews and how those countries do in terms of political development, their scientific development, their technological development.
The Torah tells us that if the Jews don't do their charge, so they will be sent out of the land. And while they're away, the land will become desolate. Well, the land in the late 1800s was barren, full of rocks. Couldn't produce anything here.
Mark Twain came here in 1850. He talks about all these places that he tried to pay respects to. He was saddened by the fact that it was a desolation. Nothing grew here.
The land would lay desolate, and your foes who dwell upon it will be desolate. Now, to understand the impossibility of that promise, you have to understand the geographic map of biblical.
It's 2:19. Good afternoon. I'm Emily Boyer. Thanks for tuning in for All Things Considered on KUNC. Support this afternoon comes from 10,000 Villages in Fort Collins, working toward building 10,000 Facebook friends for 10,000 Villages on Facebook at Fort Collins 10,000 Villages. A chance for rain showers and thunderstorms tonight along the Front Range and Plains. Lows this evening in the 40s. Another cloudy day tomorrow. Highs in the upper 60s to low 70s.
Day sponsors provide support for a day's programming on KUNC. Our day sponsor for today is Frank Foos, encouraging KUNC listeners to support the programming with their memberships.
Support for All Things Considered comes from Clannad, coming to Denver's Paramount Theater on October 23rd. KUNC presents Clannad, whose blend of traditional and modern help define today's Celtic music. Tickets now on sale at TicketHorse.com or the Pepsi Center box office. You're listening to All Things Considered on KUNC.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Robert Siegel.
And I'm Melissa Block. American Airlines' fight with its pilots union is getting ugly, and passengers are paying the price. American is in bankruptcy, and as this labor dispute has heated up, some pilots have been finding a lot of little things wrong with their airplanes. As a result, American's on-time performance has plummeted, and cancellations are way up. Last night, the company sent a letter to the Allied Pilots Association threatening legal action, which has made the pilots even angrier. From Dallas, NPR's Wade Goodwin reports.
Pat Henenberry is an
received $30,000 in a personal written apology from Chancellor Linda Katehi. There will be a pool of $100,000 to pay others who come forward. The settlement, which will be paid out of UC Davis's self-insurance fund, also calls for the payment of $250,000 in legal fees and costs to the lawyers who filed the suit. The deal was agreed to in mediation sessions after the 21 students sued last February and still must be approved by a federal judge. Lieutenant John Pike, one of two officers who deployed the pepper spray, was fired by UC Davis. The settlement brings the total payout for the pepper spray incident to more than $2 million, the Bee reports, unquote. Shout out to police officers who can safely be categorized as pigs. I'm not talking about the vast majority of police officers who are good, decent, hardworking men and women. I'm not referring to them. I'm referring to the pigs. You hear about them on this show, those who, like this guy, pepper spraying students who are sitting peacefully, whacking people with clubs unnecessarily, brutalizing senior citizens, tasing people in wheelchairs, mothers with their children. These are pigs. They are a disgrace to the good officers. I recommend officers like this be fired and prosecuted, because that's how you maintain the dignity of a police force. You get rid of the bad apples. Go online, you'll find it. UC Davis, Lieutenant John Pike, look for the picture. Students sitting peacefully, and this piece of garbage pepper spraying them. No Nazi officer ever did it better. Item from Infowars.com. When ABC News decided to investigate a reported spate of thefts by TSA officers of passenger belongings, its news team purposefully left an iPad behind at a checkpoint at Orlando Airport. Barely 2 hours later, the device was tracked to the home of a TSA screener, who then blamed his wife for the theft when he was confronted. ABC News waited 15 days before going to the home of TSA officer Andy Ramirez and asking him to give the iPad back. Ramirez reportedly denied knowing anything about the iPad at first and told the team to contact the airport's Lost and Found department. The news team knew full well that the TSA screener was lying because it had activated a tracking app that had been previously installed on the device. When the team activated the app's audio alarm feature, Ramirez went to retrieve the iPad and took off his TSA uniform before returning and handing over the device. My wife says she got the iPad and brought it home, he told the news team. The ABC report notes that his wife then appeared at the door to say she had found it and, quote, not told my husband. However, the news team had obtained security camera footage from the checkpoint that showed Ramirez taking the device. When they informed him of this, he shut the door on them and did not respond to further questions. Unquote. Related item, also from InfoWars. The TSA's bizarre new policy where it orders travelers who've already passed security to freeze on command has been caught on camera, with the clip illustrating once more how the federal agency has implemented a series of ludicrous policies that seemingly have no other purpose than to act as an obedience test for the traveling public. The video shows the final 24 seconds of a 2-minute period during which travelers were ordered to freeze by TSA workers and were not allowed to move. One TSA screener is heard to say, quote, stay right where you are, unquote, at a man who's walking through the airport as the other static travelers look on in bewilderment. According to the YouTube user responsible for uploading the clip, quote, this video was shot within the secure area of the terminal beyond the security gate. Note that the TSA guard is offering no explanation, only giving harsh threats and orders to stay still. Note that there was no event, no threat taking place of any kind, he adds. As we have previously highlighted, the freeze policy has been experienced by numerous travelers across the country. It's known as Code Bravo Sierra, or simply Code Bravo by the TSA. New York Times columnist Joe Sharkey described how he was caught up in the policy on 2 separate occasions last year while traveling through airports in Atlanta and Los Angeles. When Sharkey failed to obey a TSA screener who shouted, "Freeze," he was assailed by another traveler who growled at him, "You're supposed to freeze," as other passengers complied with the bizarre demand. Sharkey later discovered that the TSA had no power to enforce travelers to comply with the command, unquote. So TSA is shouting at us, "Freeze." Okay. Well, I'm shouting at TSA, "Kiss my ass." Item from Ross Story. A judge in Cook County, Illinois on Thursday dismissed over 90 cases against Occupy Chicago activists on the ground that they violated the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Judge Thomas Donnelly declared that the city's park curfew law that was used to arrest activists in Grant Park last October was, quote, unconstitutional both on its face and as applied, and all complaints in this case are dismissed with prejudice, unquote, according to the Chicago chapter of the National Lawyers Guild. The Occupy Chicago demonstrators were subject to constantly changing rules and regulations that ended in a directive that they had to be constantly moving in order to protest, the judge explained in his 37-page opinion. Viewed in isolation, the rules and regulations appear reasonable. But viewed in the larger context of the Occupy movement's presence in Chicago, they give rise to the inference that the city was attempting to discourage this particular protest. The police would promulgate a rule, he added, then the protesters would comply, the police would change the rule. These facts, together with a clear pattern of selective enforcement of the curfew, support a finding that the city intended to discriminate against the defendants based on their views, unquote. Good. Now for the second part of the ruling. Take the cops who did this and throw their asses in stir. Then there'll be justice. We'll be back.
When you focus on doing one thing right, odds are you end up with something really right. At Ram, we only build trucks with legendary engines like the Hemi V8 and Cummins diesel, and a 5-year, 100,000-mile powertrain limited warranty that beats the Ford F-150 by 40,000 miles. We may never be called a jack of all trades, but that's okay, because we're the masters of one. See for yourself at Ram Power Days. See your local Ram dealer today and get $7,700 in total values on the 2012 Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cab during Ram Power Days. See dealer for details and a copy of limited warranty. Values include $3,200 Bighorn package discount and $4,500 cash allowance. Package values based on combined value of individual package items. Residency restrictions apply. Offer ends 10/1. Cummins is a registered trademark of Cummins, Inc. Ram and Hemi are registered trademarks of Chrysler Group, LLC.
And let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching. This is Pastor Michael Golden. My wife Danny and I would like to invite you to join us at the Voice of Many Waters congregation for a Mikra HaKodesh, a holy convocation, every Saturday, Shabbat, at 1 p.m. at 3J's Christian Coffee House, 21 North Parish Avenue in Johnstown. We'll be having praise and worship, fellowship, midrash teaching and study time, followed by an oneg. Check out our website at www.voiceofmanywaters.org. That's voiceofmanywaters.org. Or call us at 1-303-522-3562. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And of his fullness we have all received, and grace for grace. For the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ. No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, who is in the bosom of the Father, he has declared him. The Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 16.
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution
back with more Real Truth. Once again, my friends, there'll be no show on Monday and Tuesday. I will be back on the air, hopefully, Wednesday. Now, David Horowitz is a great champion of freedom. He was being interviewed by Megyn Kelly on Fox News on September 19th, just over a week ago, talking about free speech and how it needs to be defended. What he said is important. Let's hear it.
Fox News alert on some video we got moments ago from outside of the American consulate in Karachi, Pakistan. Look at this. New video showing rioters burning flags and effigies while demanding that the U.S. apologize for the controversial anti-Islamic film posted on YouTube. I mean, there's a real question about whether this is a film at all or just some lame trailer. All this comes as Egypt issues arrest warrants for 7 people believed to be behind the film to put them on trial in absentia. That includes the man believed to be the filmmaker, Nakula Basali Nakula. Police marched him out of his home this weekend to, quote, interview him about a probation violation. He's not supposed to be on the internet. But is it really standard police procedure to send half-dozen federal officers for a possible probation violation? And why did they do this? David Horowitz is an author and civil rights activist. David, you tell me. He was convicted of bank fraud. They say he may have violated his probation by being on the internet. So you sent half a dozen agents in the middle of the night to drag him out. What was that about?
This is one of the most disgraceful moments in the history of the American presidency. There's no more sacred principle for Americans than free speech and free expression. If you don't have the right of expressing your opinion, however hateful it may be, you don't have any rights. Americans cannot defend all the other rights they have if they don't have free speech. And for the United States government to arrest this man in this context and make him somehow responsible for the shameful behavior of the Muslims. If Muslims are rioting against a film, shame on them. The White House should be defending this filmmaker and his right to express himself. And of course, this is all just a pretext because that trailer has been up on the internet since July. It's not about a film. This is not about a film. This is about the blind sheik. This is about the rise of Islamic Nazism in Egypt and all these countries. An American ambassador has been raped and tortured and murdered, and the White House is focusing, or the Justice Department is focusing on a filmmaker. And you have to ask yourself, isn't it not the fact that the chief advisor on Muslim affairs for Hillary Clinton, for our Secretary of State, is a Muslim Brotherhood operative? And the Obama administration has turned over Egypt to the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a Nazi organization.
Just a couple. I mean, there are questions about whether that's true or not with respect to Hillary Clinton.
Well, it is true.
Well, okay,
she
that's
worked
fine.
for 12
that's your position.
years.
I know, I understand. And that's your. That's, I believe you're referring to Anthony Weiner's wife, correct?
Huma Abedin.
Right. Okay. So there's a real question about that. They've taken real issue with that, but I don't want to get sidetracked. I don't want to get sidetracked because But listen, I apologize for interrupting you because we have a short time, and I want to stay on topic. And that is, and by the way, the guy wasn't arrested, but he was dragged away for this probation violation. And the question I have for you is, some folks may say, look, why not make a demonstration to the Muslim world, in particular these radicals, to show them that even though we stand for free speech, we don't like speech that they find so offensive and illegal in other countries?
That is ridiculous. We shouldn't apologize for anything. Free speech is free speech. If you start apologizing for it, you already are undermining it, which Hillary Clinton has done at the UN, by the way. The Muslim Brotherhood has a global campaign to outlaw and criminalize free speech. There was a photo on the internet of a woman pushing a 3-year-old in a stroller, and the 3-year-old, these are Muslims, was holding up a sign saying, "Behead those who insult Islam. Behead those who insult Islam." This is an evil doctrine, and it has to be fought. And I'm just appalled by the failure of leadership in this country to stand up when you're faced with Islamic Nazis. You have to denounce them, and you can do it diplomatically if you like, but you don't apologize. and you don't go around arresting filmmakers in the middle of this crisis.
I agree with Mr. Horowitz completely, except he says you don't just sit there and do nothing, you denounce them. Well, yeah, you start by denouncing them, then you put them outside the country. You get the hell rid of them. That's what you do. Item from Agence France Presse. Celine Dion, Jennifer Hudson, and Usher are lending their voices to a one-hour U.S. television special honoring Whitney Houston, who died in February at the age of 48, organizers said on Thursday, unquote. In a related item, Houston's friends are proud to announce that Whitney has now been clean for 6 months. Item from William Mayer at pipelinenews.org, I quote, in 2008, we put the below video, and you'll find the link to my Facebook page, together to show what Barack Obama was all about, how his worldview was formed, and where he learned the divisive techniques he has subsequently employed to build the larger repressive state apparatus he now commands. Unfortunately, everything we predicted has come to pass. And now, have our first neo-Marxist, possibly stealth Muslim president, bent on turning the United States into a collectivist state. Our early assessment has proven entirely correct. In his run for re-election, the entire media, with very few exceptions, has become an extension of the Obama press office. There is nothing the hard left will hesitate to do in order to keep their maximum leader in power. Traditionalists, conservatives, and in tune independents in America must not take the bait that the election's already over. The actual truth is that Mitt Romney has a substantial chance to defeat Obama by a comfortable margin. The media is intentionally creating lies and then broadcasting them. It has cobbled together a series of ridiculously biased phone polls that are then pushed hard by the MSN, major state media, as if true to suppress your vote. A few facts to remember about Obama as November 6th approaches. 1. The primary role of the president is commander-in-chief. This means his first duty is to protect the national security interests of the United States. In his role, examining all of his actions and statements going back to at least his disastrous 2009 Cairo speech, the president's speech in Cairo, in the beginning, the president has crashed and burned. The 2009 speech was noteworthy for a couple of reasons. In the audience's first two rows sat the most important leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood, the terrorist organization which created Hamas and now runs Egypt. These people were personally invited by Team Obama. Here's a key quote. Quote, more recently, tensions have been fed by colonialism that denied rights and opportunities to many Muslims, and a Cold War in which Muslim-majority countries were too often treated as proxies without regard to their own aspirations. The issue has been a source of tension between the U.S. and the Islamic Republic of Iran. For many years, I won't continue. Egypt is now dictatorially run by Mohammed Morsi, a member of the Muslim Brotherhood leadership team. In one of his first speeches, of course, delivered in Arabic, he says his administration now considers Israel an enemy and will act accordingly. The result of Obama's 2009 surrender is that the entire Middle East is now in flames, is rapidly becoming radicalized with our embassies, personnel, and national security interests under threat as never before. Obama has also abandoned both Afghanistan and Iraq after the loss of thousands of American lives. Thus, the Muslim world has learned that we are weak, unwilling to project force, and refuse to stand by our commitments and beside our allies, unquote. Remember this, my friends, on November 6th, before you pull that lever. We'll be back.
An emergency preparedness plan for your home, car, school, and office is a must. Knowing how to store water safely, survive extreme temperature changes, provide reliable shelter, first aid, and sanitation is critical. Knowing where to get the best lights, radios, and other supplies is easy. Ferris Survival, located at 3366 South Broadway, is a professional, reputable, full-service business providing realistic preparedness supplies at affordable prices. Stop by, go online, or call 303-781-0343, 866-781-0343. Ladies, this is Danny Golden informing you that heart attacks in women can be different than heart attacks in men. Women having heart attacks will experience nausea, vomiting, indigestion, shortness of breath, or simply sudden and extreme fatigue, but no chest pain. Get emergency medical help and call 911 immediately if you are experiencing any of these symptoms. Pain, pressure, burning or squeezing in the chest, jaw, shoulders, back, or arms that last more than 5 to 10 minutes. Unexplained shortness of breath lasting more than 5 to 10 minutes. Sudden severe nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, or indigestion, sudden sweating for no reason, sudden unexplained extreme fatigue, loss of consciousness or fainting, or sudden unexplained panicky feeling of doom. The key, ladies, is to listen to your body, follow your instincts, and if you experience symptoms that are disturbing to you in any way, or even remotely related to your heart, get yourself checked out right away. If your doctor brushes you off, that's a sign you need a new doctor, one who will actually do what is necessary to get to the bottom of your symptoms.
He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, to those who believe in his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. The Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 10 through 13.
Friends, welcome back to Real Truth. Remember, we'll be returning on Wednesday of next week with our next show. We'll be off on Monday and Tuesday for Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, as it is otherwise known. Let's move forward. Item from creepingsharia.wordpress.com. I quote, Uh-oh, Canada. First, it was Toronto middle schools converted to mosques on Fridays. Now high schools. Muslims want permanent prayer rooms in high schools. While Ottawa high schools profess to offer prayer rooms for Muslim students, an Islamic leader says they don't have a permanent space and are often relegated to small classrooms, if they can get space at all. Washim Ahmed is the Islamic director of Carleton University's Muslim Students Association, and he leads a prayer service at more than half a dozen public high schools in Ottawa on Fridays. But he said none of the schools have permanent prayer rooms, and they're often shuffled between classrooms or the gym, depending on what's available. Stop. Tough toenails. Item from Fox News, Dateline Cairo. On the eve of his first visit to the United States as Egypt's president, Islamist Mohamed Morsi said he will demonstrate more independence from the U.S. in decision-making than his predecessor, Hosni Mubarak, and told Washington not to expect Egypt to live by its rules. Morsi sent the message in an interview with the New York Times after a wave of violence erupted across the Muslim world over an amateur film produced in the U.S. that was deemed offensive to Islam and the Prophet Muhammad. The film raised new tensions between Washington and Egypt. Morsi criticized U.S. dealings with the Arab world, saying it's not possible to judge Egyptian behavior and decision-making by American cultural standards. Stop. Exactly correct. The more the United States bends over backwards to please the Arab world, the more the Arab world gets angry. Now, I'm only from Brooklyn. I don't know nothing from nothing. But I'm saying, if you do something and it just makes millions of people angry, maybe you should think of stopping. I realize this is controversial. I realize it makes too much sense for anyone to adopt. But listen to what else Morsi says now. He says Washington earned ill will in the region in the past by backing dictators and taking a very clear biased approach against the Palestinians and for Israel. My friends, can you imagine that? America taking a stance against murderers? Who would believe it? His next comment is even more telling. Listen to this. Quote, successive American administrations essentially purchased with American taxpayer money the dislike, if not the hatred, of the peoples of the region, he told the paper in an interview. Stop. So successive administrations have shoveled billions of dollars into the region, and all we've gotten for our money is, quote, the dislike, if not the hatred of the peoples of the region, unquote. Here's my suggestion. We stop sending them money. We reroute the money to our only dependable ally in the region, Israel. That's number one. Number two, we disarm the Arab Middle East. You got an army? No more. Working on nuclear weapons? No more. Biological weapons? No more. We're disarming you. Give us your weapons. If you don't, we'll kill you. If you arm again, we'll kill you. That way the rabid dog is defanged, collared, leashed. Don't do that, then you won't have peace. So stop yammering about peace in the Middle East if you're not willing to do what it takes to achieve it. Item from Breitbart.com. Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, who also ran the Democratic National Convention, has now embroiled himself in a scandal of epic proportions with taxpayer dollars. Villaraigosa and staff negotiated a deal with Anschutz Entertainment Group to build a football stadium in downtown Los Angeles. The price tag for the taxpayers, almost $400 million in debt, supposedly to be repaid by AEG. The stadium will be built on land currently occupied by the Los Angeles Convention Center. Los Angeles, as you may recall, doesn't have a football team. Sounds like a typical stadium boondoggle, except turns out that AEG is being sold, which means that the group that will perform the contract with the city of Los Angeles is not the same as the group that negotiated the contract. Here's where it gets ugly. Villaraigosa knew about the upcoming sale and told nobody. He kept it a secret. He said nothing to Chief Legislative Analyst Jerry Miller and City Administrative Official Miguel Santana. Members of the council who will have to sign off on the deal were kept in the dark, too, unquote. My friends, the only thing I can't figure out is why does Los Angeles and why does California on a larger scale, why are they having money problems? I don't get it when they're so smart with how they handle their money. See, I'd be tempted to laugh at them. Except the idiocy displayed by Los Angeles and by California as a whole, that idiocy is built on the backs of honest, hard-working people who've had their money confiscated, which means it's not comedy. It's tragedy. Item from the Economic Collapse blog. QE3 has barely even started, and some folks on Wall Street are already clamoring for QE4. In fact, as you will read below, one equity strategist at Morgan Stanley says he would not be surprised if the Federal Reserve announced another new round of money printing by the end of the year. But this is what tends to happen when a financial system starts becoming addicted to easy money. There's always a deep hunger for another hit of currency meth. Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke was probably hoping QE3 would satisfy the wolves on Wall Street for a while. His promise to recklessly print $40 billion a month and use it to buy mortgage-backed securities is being called QE infinity. QE infinity by detractors. During QE3, nearly $500 billion a year will be added to the financial system until the Fed decides it's time to stop. This is so crazy that even former Federal Reserve officials are speaking out against it. For example, former Fed Reserve Chairman Paul Volcker says QE3 is, quote, the most extreme easing of monetary policy that he could ever remember. But the big Wall Street banks are never going to be satisfied. If QE4 is announced, they will start calling for QE5. As I noted in the previous article, quantitative easing tends to pump up the prices of financial assets such as stocks and commodities, and that's very good for Wall Street. So, of course, they want more quantitative easing. They also always want bigger profits and bigger bonus checks at the end of the year. But at this point, the Federal Reserve has already jumped the shark. If you don't know what jumping the shark means, you can find the definition on Wikipedia. Whatever shreds of credibility the Fed had left are being washed away by a flood of newly printed money. My friends, we'll be back and we'll wrap things up for the week here on Real Truth.
Just a good old boy.
Hi, I'm Eric Cedarstrom. For over a decade, I've been the CEO, shipping clerk, and janitor of the Patriot Trading Group. And in that time, I've made friends with tens of thousands of like-minded individuals all over this country, most like me, trying to raise a family, run a business, and make sense out of a world gone mad. I'm proud of the fact that through stock bubbles, housing bubbles, and financial chaos, our customers are prospering and doing very well. By keeping our prices fair and our service fast, we find that 80% of our customers not only reorder, but they tell their friends. Don't be fooled by hype and high pressure. Do business with a company you can trust. Call the Patriot Trading Group at 1-800-951-0592 or check out our website at allamericangold.com. You'll be treated with honesty and respect. You have my word on it. I'm Eric Cedarstrom, CEO, shipping clerk, and janitor.
Making their way the only way they know how.
The Lord brings the counsel of the nations to nothing. He makes the plans of the peoples of no effect. The counsel of the Lord stands forever, the plans of his heart to all generations. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, the people he has chosen as his own inheritance. Psalm 33, verses 10 through 12.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. This is the America News Network.
Folks, welcome back to Real Truth. We've got 4 minutes left in the broadcast week. Let's make them all count. Item from End of the American Dream. I quote, "You are being watched." The control freaks that hold power in the U.S. have become absolutely obsessed with surveillance. They are constantly attempting to convince the American people that we're all safer when virtually everything we do is watched, monitored, tracked, and recorded. Our country is being systematically transformed into a giant surveillance grid far more comprehensive than anything George Orwell ever dreamed of. If you still believe there's such a thing as privacy in this day and age, you're being delusional. Every single piece of electronic communication is monitored and stored. In fact, they know that you're reading this article right now. But even if you got rid of all your electronic devices, you'd still be constantly monitored. As you'll read below, a rapidly growing nationwide network of facial recognition cameras, pre-crime surveillance devices, voice recorders, mobile backscatter vans, aerial drones, and automated license plate readers are constantly feeding data about us back to the government. In addition, private companies involved in data mining are gathering literally trillions upon trillions of data points about individual Americans each year. So there's no escape from the surveillance grid. In fact, it's become just about impossible to keep it from growing. The surveillance grid is expanding in thousands of different ways, so even if you stopped one form of surveillance, you would hardly make a dent in the astounding growth of this system. What we desperately need is a fundamental cultural awakening to the importance of liberty, freedom, and privacy. Without such an awakening, the United States, along with the rest of the planet, is going to head into a world that will make 1984 by George Orwell look like a cheery story about a Sunday picnic. The following are 19 signs that America is being systematically transformed into a giant surveillance grid. My friends, I guarantee I will not get through all 19. Go to the End of the American Dream blog, and you'll see it. Number 1, new software that will store and analyze millions of our voices. 2, unmanned aerial drones will be used inside the U.S. to spy on you. 3, high-tech government scanners that can secretly scan you from 164 feet away. 4, the DNA of newborn babies all over the U.S. is systematically collected. 5, Twitter is being used to monitor you. 6, your cell phone is spying on you. 7, students are increasingly being tracked by RFID microchips. 8, spy cams in hospitals to monitor hand washing. 9, spyware that monitors the behavior of government workers. 10, the NSA warrantless surveillance programs. 11, pre-crime surveillance technology. 12, mobile backscatter vans. 13, automated license plate readers. 14, data mining. 15, the growing use of facial recognition technology. 16, rapid DNA testing. 17, the FBI's next generation identification system. 18, the NYPD's domain awareness system. 19, trapwire. My friends, if we can get enough people to wake up, perhaps there's still enough time to turn this country in a different direction. Will the final chapters of our history be a complete and total nightmare, or will the final chapters of our history be the greatest chapters of all? Unquote. My friends, I can't think of a better way to end today's show and end the broadcast week. The choice is up to you and to me. The worst choice we can make is to do nothing. Because then, by definition, the bad guys win, the jig is up, and America's done, and you have nothing of value to give to your children and grandchildren. As far as I'm concerned, that's the worst fate of all. I will wish you a happy and a healthy weekend. Again, I'll be off for the Sukkot holiday Monday, Tuesday. I'll be back on Wednesday. Let me leave you with this thought as I do every Thursday. My friends, from my heart to you, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay angry.